This is breaking news.
Welcome to CBS News New York. We interrupt programming with breaking news in the sex crimes trial of Sean Diddy Combs. I'm Mary Calvi.
And I'm Cindy Hsu. After a partial verdict was reached yesterday, the jury returned to deliberations this morning. And we hear that a verdict is in, so we're waiting for that to be read. Let's first go to the 5 federal charges. He's facing 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and 2 counts of transportation for prostitution.
We have team coverage for you. Let's begin with Jennifer Bistram outside criminal court in Lower Manhattan. Jennifer, what are we learning?
Hi, Mary and Cindy. You know, jury deliberations began just shortly after 9 this morning again, and within an hour, we are told that there is a verdict in all 5 charges in this sex trafficking trial against Sean Diddy Combs. We still do not know what the verdict is just yet, but we are reading notes from our Alice Gaynor, who is inside the courtroom right now. She says right now prosecutors are sitting there, many of them with their arms folded. Sean Combs walked in this morning. He said something to his family. He put on his glasses. Right now he is sitting down, and they are all waiting basically for what that verdict is right now. And you may recall yesterday there was a partial verdict. There was a verdict in 4 of the 5 charges in this trial, 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. But the one charge that the jury was deadlocked on was this racketeering conspiracy charge, the most complicated but also the most serious charge. If convicted on this charge alone, Sean Diddy Combs could spend the rest of his life behind bars. And just to kind of bring you back to speed what that means, what this RICO charge means, it means that jurors have to unanimously agree on at least 2 elements of the RICO charge before they can convict him of this racketeering conspiracy charge. And those 8 elements include kidnapping, arson, witness tampering, forced labor, sex transportation, sex trafficking, transportation for purpose of prostitution, drug distribution, and bribery. And I'm just being told right now that the jurors are being brought into the room. All rise. That is the last thing we're hearing from our Alice Gaynor inside of the courtroom. And we are just standing by as a lot of people here. You can see outside of the courthouse here, lots of people here, supporters for Diddy, just people wanting to see what's going to happen with this trial, if there's going to be a guilty or not guilty charge on these 5 charges, rather. Guys?
Jennifer Bistram live outside court as we are hearing that jurors are now in the courtroom, and we have heard all rise. As we wait for all of that, we are joined right now by Mitchell Epner. He's a criminal defense attorney. What are we expecting in the next few minutes?
Yes, so the jurors will come back in. The judge will take their verdict on all 5 counts, and then that will essentially be it for the day. Other than if Mr. Combs is found not guilty, he will be released. If he's found guilty on 1 or more charges, then they will have to set up a sentencing.
Mitchell, what was your reaction when there was a partial verdict yesterday, and then they so quickly came to a verdict on the first count, which was the thing they were having trouble with?
So one thing that people who have been doing this for as long as I have learned is that when jurors say that they're deadlocked, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're permanently deadlocked. Here, the jurors said that they were deadlocked on count 1. The judge said, please continue trying to deliberate. And then within a very short period of time, they came to a conclusion. We have no idea how that conclusion was reached. Sometimes the person who was the holdout changes sides. Sometimes the person who was the holdout says, I'm never changing sides. And the people who were in the majority say, we just want to get out of here. And sometimes the people actually have a meeting of the minds, and it's about the merits, not just about the jurors giving up.
What are your thoughts about what we might expect, guilty or not guilty?
So given the fact that the jurors were split on the RICO charge, I would be shocked if he was found not guilty on all counts, because I cannot imagine a world where they were split on the RICO count, but weren't going to find him guilty on at least the interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution counts, which the defense on that was very slim. It was essentially these people weren't being paid for sex, they were being paid for their time. But if Sean Combs were only found guilty on the interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, that would be a near complete victory for him. The big question, and the one that I really don't have a good answer to, is what's going to happen on the three main charges, the RICO charge and the two sex trafficking charges, because the sex trafficking charges each carry a 15-year mandatory minimum and up to life, and the RICO charge carries up to life if he is found guilty on the sex trafficking. So that is what I will be listening for.
Okay, so what happens if they find him not guilty on the first count and then, guilty on just one of the other counts? What are we talking about, what he could face?
So if he's found guilty only on the interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, then we're talking about a sentence that would be measured in months. And it is possible that he could eventually be sentenced to time served. And it's possible that he could even get bail today if that were the only offense of conviction. If he is convicted on the sex trafficking, that is, each one of those carries a 15-year mandatory minimum, and they stack. So
Mitchell, we're going to stop you there and go right now to the courthouse. Jennifer Bisram, what are you hearing? Jennifer Bisram is live out.
We have just learned from our Alice Gaynor that Sean Diddy Combs, there is a not guilty count on the racketeering conspiracy charge. There's not guilty on count 2, guilty on count 3, not guilty on count 4, guilty on count 5. That is a really big deal, because that conspiracy charge was the biggest charge in all of this, ladies. Whether Combs would have spent the rest of his life in prison or if he was not. And so basically the jury found him not guilty on this racketeering conspiracy charge. It's the one charge that they just couldn't come together to decide yesterday, but they have within an hour of deliberating here today. Of course, our Alice Gaynor is inside the courtroom, and she will be here to give us much more from what happened inside of the courtroom. But again, let me read those charges to you. Not guilty on racketeering conspiracy, not guilty on count 2, guilty on count 3, not guilty on count 4, guilty on count 5. We'll send it back to the studio.
2 guilty verdicts on count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution, and count 5, again, transportation to engage in prostitution. We have not guilty on racketeering conspiracy, not guilty on count 2, that was sex trafficking, and not guilty on count 4, another charge of sex trafficking. Let's get back to our attorney, Mitchell. So what you were saying earlier is what seems to have come to pass. Transportation to engage in prostitution, the least severe of the charges. He has been found guilty on 2 of them.
Yes. So this is a great day for the defense and a very bad day for the prosecution. I am confident that the defense would have taken this as a plea in advance of the trial. The sentence, the maximum sentence, which you should pay very little attention to because it will not be the sentence imposed, is 10 years. But I used to be a sex trafficking prosecutor. This Mann Act prosecution conviction, the sentence will be measured probably in months, not years. I would not be surprised if the judge entertains an application for bail from Sean Combs today. I think it is possible that Sean Combs could be let out of jail pending sentencing.
Mitchell, what was your reaction when you heard this guilty, not guilty for several counts?
So I was a little bit surprised that the Sean Combs Cassandra Ventura count was a not guilty. I thought that was the strongest case that the prosecution had. The reason it was surprising to me was that the jurors said yesterday that they were split on the RICO charge, which meant that they were split on the question of whether there was a RICO, not based on sex trafficking, but based upon the other alleged bad acts, the interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, arson, kidnapping. And eventually the jurors who were for acquittal won out on that, but they were never going to find Sean Combs guilty of RICO on the basis of sex trafficking.
With your experience as prosecutor in sex trafficking, what do you think went wrong for the prosecution here now that we know he has been found not guilty on those sex trafficking charges?
So the question from the beginning of this case was very simple. Were Cassandra Ventura and Mia victims or volunteers? And the prosecution had to prove that they were victims, at least at some point in time, beyond a reasonable doubt. And the problem that the prosecution had was that these two women continued to be in relationships with Sean Combs for extraordinarily long periods of time when they were not held under lock and key. The sort of sex trafficking prosecutions that I used to be in charge of were people who were literally held in virtual slavery and had no ability to interact with the public and were told, if you go to the police, you'll be killed and your families back in the country you come from will be killed. It was not that sort of case, and the prosecution was not able to make their case that these women were coerced into doing the freak-offs, but rather the jurors had at least a reasonable doubt that they were volunteers.
Mitchell, so how long do we expect it to find out about the sentencing? And also, you were saying that he actually might be released today.
So obviously, I'm getting my information as you are. I'm not in the courtroom. I'm in my office. So I don't know what's going on. If I were the defense counsel, and I know these defense counsel, I would be making an application for bail pending sentencing. He has been held in MDC, which is a truly horrific prison. The conditions are awful. Judges have often in the Southern District of New York said, I'm going to grant bail unless you find someplace else to hold this person. And I expect that the sentencing would take place be scheduled for someplace in the range of about 60 to 90 days from now. And it is possible that the eventual sentence will be time served. And if so, the defense counsel will argue it would be a miscarriage of justice for the time served to be increased by even a single additional day awaiting the sentencing.
And again, just to recap, racketeering, conspiracy, a not guilty verdict on that, on sex trafficking, not guilty on both counts. There is a guilty verdict on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Those are the least of the charges. Again, we are hearing that we're talking months, not years, when it comes to jail time. In fact, he could receive bail today and have time served, so not have any additional jail time. We've been talking with a U.S. attorney, former criminal defense attorney in sex trafficking cases. Right now, let's go back to Jennifer Bisram for a recap of what we know. Jennifer.
Hey there, Mary. Yeah, we know now that Sean Diddy Combs was found not guilty on that racketeering conspiracy charge. We know he was found not guilty on the sex trafficking by fraud, force, or coercion. What we do know is that he was found guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. That has a sentence of 0 to 10 years in life per count. Now, our Alice Gaynor, again, has been inside the courtroom, and she is sending us notes. She says Combs at one point just pumped his fist. He put his head up to the sky with prayers in his hand. We've seen this throughout this trial where he came into the courtroom, he would pray, his family would be in the courtroom inside there with him, and they would at times even pray together with them in the gallery, and Sean Combs kind of turning around facing them. Right now, if you could see or take a look behind me and even hear, there are a lot of people outside of the courthouse now. Some supporters for Sean Diddy Combs who are chanting "Free Diddy," but just within an hour of deliberations today, that is how the jury came back today. Not guilty on racketeering conspiracy, not guilty on sex trafficking, but guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Now, remember the racketeering conspiracy charge, that was a big one because we talked about this before. This was the charge that could have landed Sean Diddy Combs in prison for the rest of his life. And that is what the jury was deadlocked on yesterday up until around 5 o'clock. They came back this morning and they decided that he is not guilty on that charge. Mary?
Jennifer, can you give us an idea of what you're seeing there outside the courthouse? You gave us a little bit of an indication that you're hearing people chant "Free Diddy." Tell us about the scene right now.
So there are, of course, there's lots of media here, Mary, as you can see and as you may imagine. But if you take a look behind me here, you can see lots of people. They are just standing here outside of the courtroom. Some of them supporters of Sean Diddy Combs screaming or chanting "Free Diddy." Right now, you don't hear that. But at one point, that is what we heard. And I want to, Mary, if it's okay, to go back to a note that Alice has just sent us. The defense is currently arguing that they want him released, Sean Diddy Combs, and be able to return to his Miami home on Star Island. His plane has been chartered. It's in Miami. He does not have access to his plane. This is his first conviction. He should be released. His entire family is here. Any of them can sign onto a bond. The judge then asks, your proposal is he leave this courtroom and walk outside? The defense says, yes, I know there are things marshals have to do. He'd be permitted to walk out. That is my proposal. The judge says, is there application is for $1 million bond secured by 3 people? Defense says correct. Judge says he has relinquished his passport. Defense says we'll give to pretrial services. Want him to be able to go to Florida, LA, and New York. As you can imagine, the government opposes this application. So it's still unclear at this hour if Sean Diddy Combs will be able to walk out of the courthouse today and if he will be able to go back to his home in Miami at this point. But from these notes that Alice is sending, he does not have his passport. All his family is here, and that is what the defense is asking. That is the next step that the defense is asking for at this juncture.
Jennifer, when you heard what the verdicts were, what was the reaction? I know there's a whole lot of reporters out there. We have Alice Gaynor inside, a whole lot of reporters in there, but also the crowds around you.
Yeah, this has been a very populated trial, if you will. Since we've been here, since even jury selection began, there has constantly been a steady flow of people outside of the courthouse, even some in the courtroom. And there are some Diddy supporters, many of them saying that he should be freed and he should not be facing these charges. This morning when when we learned that there was a verdict, more people, of course, gathered. People got wind of it. And as we mentioned to you, Mary, people were saying "Free Diddy." And it got a little hostile at one point. There are cops here now just trying to control the crowd. But that is basically the scene outside of the courthouse. I think people are just waiting to see what happens next.
Okay, Jennifer Bisram, thank you so much for that update. We'll check back to you as we continue our live team coverage on this split verdict in the case of Sean Diddy Combs. Right now, we are joined by Nel Silvia Guzman, the executive director of Safe Sisters Circle. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us and help us break down what this trial means to survivors of sexual violence going forward.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me.
Let's talk about what happened on the stand. Cassie Ventura took the stand, gave deeply personal testimony. How critical was her role in shaping the jury's view of this case now that we know, too, that he has been found not guilty on those counts?
Yeah, I think Cassie's role was very critical. It takes a lot for a survivor to be able to tell their story to anybody, let alone so publicly in such a high profile case like this was. And even her own case that she had brought last year. I think regardless of the outcome, it really shows to survivors across the country that they can speak up, no matter the fame or wealth or the prestige that their abuser has.
Now, consent was a really big issue in this case. What is the difference between domestic violence, trafficking, and is that a hard question for a jury to answer?
I think there are similarities across domestic violence and sex trafficking. With sex trafficking, you don't have to have the intimate partner relationship that you often see in domestic violence. With this case, I think it did blur the lines a lot, and that might have been where, for the jury, they believe that the sex trafficking charges weren't, to the standard of a guilty verdict. However, even if at one point Cassie did consent to any of the freak-offs and dealings, she made clear that at some point she didn't have the control or the power to say no. So at that point, there wasn't consent. And I think that's where, even though many looked at it as a domestic violence situation, there were still the allegations of sex trafficking that were very relevant. She was being moved from state to state and having to engage in these activities against her will.
And speaking on that, taking a look at those counts again, we have a guilty count in regard to transportation of sex workers. And I wanted to ask you, in this case specifically, do you see behavior that aligned with known trauma response patterns when it came to those who took the stand?
Absolutely. Especially with Jane Doe. I know they said with her testimony, there was a lot of just anxiety around her testimony and fear. And these are very common trauma responses. But for many people, they look at these as it may not be a reliable witness. But it's really just their trauma manifesting and the anxiety of having to face not only their abusers, but recount the horrors and what they had to deal with over and over again.
Now, based on your experience, is it typical for survivors to delay reporting sexual assault? And if so, can you explain what happens?
Absolutely. It is very common for somebody to delay disclosure. Part of that could be they don't even realize what happened to them was abuse or some type of, there wasn't consent there. I think there's a lot of conversation still needing to be had around what is categorized as abuse, what abuse looks like. It's not always just the physical, very violent abuse that, Cassie did experience, but for some people it's more nuanced and understanding that. And that's often why disclosure is delayed. But at any point a survivor comes forward is the right time, is what we tell our survivors. It doesn't have to be the next day. It doesn't have to be the next year. It can be years from now. As when you are ready to tell your story is when you're ready to tell it.
All right. Nell Sylvia Guzman, thank you so much for joining us. And now we want to go back to Mitchell Epner. He's a criminal defense attorney. Mitchell, now that you have heard the mixed verdicts, what is your reaction?
It is literally a mixed verdict, but it is a huge victory for Sean Combs and a huge defeat for the prosecution.
When it came to the defense's case, were you surprised that they didn't call any witnesses?
No, and this is something that I think is now in really huge display for the public. Most of the work of being a criminal defense attorney is done during the prosecution's case on cross-examination of the prosecution's witnesses. The defense was able to put in its case in its cross-examination of Cassandra Ventura, of Jane, and of Mia. And they did not put up their own witnesses because they correctly assessed that they were already in a very good situation and they would risk getting a not guilty by putting up their own witnesses.
Now, the jury has been having so many issues pretty much from day one when they were given this case. Is this typical, or is it just because we were, paying such attention to it that, every 2 seconds they were coming out with issues with the jury?
This was not a typical jury. It is not typical to get a note out from the jury within the first hour or so saying one of the jurors, we have questions about their ability to deliberate. And when you looked into who that juror was, this was somebody who holds a PhD. So the question wasn't, well, can this person communicate in English? That sometimes happens. But it was very clear from the beginning that on the substance, there was a stark divide amongst the jurors. And at the end of the day, the jurors who said not guilty on the RICO and on the sex trafficking, the most serious charges, they prevailed.
All right, Mitchell Ebner, thank you so much for your insight. We want to go back to Jennifer Bisram, who's right outside the courthouse with the latest. Jennifer, what are you hearing?
Hi there. We're looking at some notes from our Alice Gaynor, who is inside of the courtroom at this hour and is still in there to try to figure out or let us know what the next steps are. We're told that the government wants a sentence of incarceration, saying while under investigation, Sean Diddy Combs continued to commit crimes even when his attorneys advised him. The convictions here stand and suggest, Your Honor, should be detaining him until his sentencing. The judge says this is a big ask. Do you have any examples? And then the government says it's going to be seeking a lengthy prison sentence. The judge asked both sides how long they can put together a letter on this issue, and the government asks for a few hours. The judge says, I think that makes sense. I know Mr. Combs does not want to go back to the MDC. That is the jail facility in Brooklyn where he has been held since this trial. Combs, we're told, he shakes his head no and raises prayer hands again. The judge says he will convene later in the afternoon and will notify the parties then. He's going to wait for the parties to submit. The defense says Mr. Combs has been given his life by this jury. He would be nothing short of a fool to do anything that would violate any condition. It's a unique set of circumstances. So basically right now what's happening is they are both going and trying to decide what are the next steps for Sean Diddy Combs. Will he remain incarcerated? Will he not? Where will he be incarcerated? If he is released, where will he be released? Our Alice Gaynor says Combs turned around. He kneeled down on the ground and put his hand on his chair and prayed. His family and Combs erupt in loud applause, cheering loudly and whistling inside of that courtroom. The family is hugging one another in the gallery right now. And so we're told that the family will be leaving the courtroom shortly. And of course, as they leave the courtroom, we will certainly see if they are available or willing to talk and get their reaction. But that is the latest here from outside of the courthouse.
As you said, Jennifer, cheers in the courtroom from Sean Diddy Combs' family. We are awaiting them as they leave the courthouse. Of course, if they are speaking, we will bring that to you live. And again, Combs convicted of 2 counts of the prostitution-related charge. Each count carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. Now, it is unlikely he will get that maximum sentence and that prison term. That would be 20 years in prison. But we're hearing from experts that it is likely that he will serve much less time, months, not years in jail, and possibly time served. Jennifer Bisram, I know you've been covering it from outside the courthouse. We have Alice Gaynor, who has been inside the courthouse, and we have been hearing from her and her notes. And again, as you mentioned, Jennifer, there was an eruption in the courthouse of cheers from the family, as you were saying.
Yeah, according to Alice Gaynor's note, the family was hugging one another in the gallery. And I think the telling thing is when Combs turned around and he basically kneeled down on the ground, put his hands on his chair, and he just prayed. We saw this a lot throughout the trial where Sean Diddy Combs was constantly praying and, giving signs to his family, I love you signs, hand on the heart, to this family, saying I love you, passing notes even to say that I love you. So, this must be a moment for the Combs family right now, and a moment for them to cheer and erupt in emotion inside of that courtroom. Mary, I want to get back to a question that you asked me earlier, and you said, what are some of the things that people out here are saying? And right before you came to me, we heard a couple of people out here say he's a black man in a white man world. The black man has been freed. Sean Diddy Combs has been freed. So that is free Diddy, free Diddy. Those are some of the things that people were saying outside here outside of the courthouse here.
To come out. So we'll go back to you when that happens, but we want to go to Nell Sylvia Guzman again. And Nell, are you with us? I just want to make sure. Nell is the executive director. Nell? Okay, she's executive director at Safe Sisters Circle. And now, just quickly tell us about your organization and also what you think the reaction is for the people that you help.
Yeah, so the Safe Sisters Circle, we provide culturally specific and trauma-informed services for Black survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. We're based in Washington, D.C., but we've been doing a lot of trainings across the nation and at conferences related to providing these tailored services to Black survivors. Black survivors face domestic violence and sexual assault at higher rates than most ethnicities, but yet aren't given a lot of resources or have access to resources. I think the thing that comes to mind for us based off of the verdict is we're hoping it doesn't create a chilling effect, especially because the larger charges were found not guilty, and survivors feeling that they can't come forward because the justice system, didn't work out in this case. But we often tell our community and we tell survivors across that we interact with that that's not the only metric of justice and accountability. There are other ways of looking for support and accountability and healing in this space, and that we hope that survivors will actually look more towards Cassie and Jane Doe and the strength that it took for them to come forward and for them to testify and use that as their guiding light as opposed to what the ultimate outcome was.
We are watching these live pictures on the doors awaiting the family of Sean Diddy Combs. They are going to exit that courthouse. Of course, we will bring that to you as it happens, and we'll continue to show you these live pictures. But I did want to ask you, in regard to those victims coming forward, and what do you tell survivors before they go to court, before they have to go before the jurors and the prosecution, the defense? How difficult is it for them to take the stand?
It is ultimately pretty difficult for many survivors. Each survivor's journey is different, but we often remind them that it's their story and their truth. We prepare them as much as we can on what they're going to be faced with when they walk through those court doors. We have a mental health program as well that works with them on making sure that they're able to get through some of those trauma responses that may manifest during their testimony. But ultimately, we tell them that it's their moment and for them to share what they need to share in the way they need to share it. And really just hope that the system will work out the way we often hope. But we also let them know that it's not always going to work out that way, as we've seen in this case. But for many of our survivors, being able to finally tell their story is enough for them. They may wish for a guilty verdict, but they know it's not always going to happen based off of the system we have.
Now I'm sure a lot of sexual assault survivors have been watching this case so closely. What would you say to them? And also the process, when the group like yours and many of the other domestic violence organizations that help survivors get survivors out of a situation just so they know what can happen and what help is out there.
Yeah. For anyone that's watched the case and felt that they resonated with the story, they see themselves in it, it's okay to ask for help. I think that is the very first step. Many people are cautious of asking for help, looking for that support, but there are people out there that are ready to help you to end that cycle, however that looks, and to get you the protections and justice that you want and how you define it.
And at this moment, let's go back to Jennifer Bisram live outside court with an update from what's happening inside court. What do we know now, Jennifer?
Hi there, Mary. We learned about 4 minutes ago that the court is done for now until they come back later to find out what the judge decides on Sean Diddy Combs' release. Again, we know that the defense wants him released. They want him released potentially to his Miami home. They say they can surrender his passport, his plane, but we also know that the government wants him to remain incarcerated. It's still unclear if that will happen, and if he does remain incarcerated, where he will be held until his sentencing. Again, our Alice Gaynor is inside the courtroom and has been giving us all these updates since the time that the jury came to a verdict. But of course, we will continue to bring you the very latest. And as soon as Alice Gaynor gets down here, we will certainly get more perspective from her as to what exactly happened inside of that courtroom, the emotions that erupted from Sean Diddy Combs' family. Sean Diddy Combs praying, and just kind of his expressions and what it appeared that he felt like in that moment when the verdict was being read by jurors, or was being read.
Going to happen next. You were telling us that the judge or the lawyers had asked for a few hours to come up with certain things. So is that something we're going to wait a few hours before we hear what happens to Sean Combs?
Yeah, the government says they need a couple of hours, they told the judge, just to kind of put together something, as well as a defense. So again, he's giving them, the attorneys, a few hours to see what they're able to put together, and then he will make his decision from there, again, on whether Sean Diddy Combs will be released conditionally or until sentencing, or if he will remain incarcerated. And if he does remain incarcerated, where exactly he will be held until sentencing day.
And just to recap what we know, there is a split verdict in the Sean Diddy Combs case on count 1, racketeering conspiracy. We're heard not guilty in regard to that. In count 2, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion in the case of Cassandra Ventura. A not guilty verdict there. On count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution. This is in the case of Cassandra Ventura. There we found a guilty verdict by the jury. Count 4, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. This is in relation to the Jane Doe who took the stand. That was a not guilty verdict, but a guilty verdict on count 5. That is transportation to engage in prostitution. That is in regards to the case of Jane Doe. And Jennifer, what do we know when it comes to sentencing on those counts 3 and 5?
Mary, what we know is that a transportation to engage in prostitution carries a sentence of 0 to 10 years in prison, and that would be for 2 counts. So each count would carry that 0 to 10 years in prison, and we just don't know exactly what the judge will decide or what they will come back with yet. And as we talked about, racketeering conspiracy, one of the most complicated charges, but also one of the most serious charges in this trial, where Sean Diddy Combs could have ended up spending the rest of his life in prison if he was convicted. Jurors were deadlocked on this yesterday, and they had to come together and unanimously agree on 8 elements of that charge, which was kidnapping, arson, bribery, witness tampering, forced labor, sex trafficking, transportation for a purpose of prostitution, and drug distribution. Again, those were the things that were deadlocked yesterday. Jurors were asking lots of questions about what exactly entails for drug distribution, and they also requested a lot of testimony from text message exchanges between Cassie Ventura and Sean Diddy Combs. I just want to interrupt right now because we do have Alice Gaynor, who is inside of the courtroom. She is going to mic up and join us right now for our coverage to talk about everything that went inside in that courtroom. But again, the defense spent a lot of time poking holes in this testimony in the prosecutor's case, showing text messages between Cassie Ventura and Sean Diddy Combs about freak-offs. At times, Cassie Ventura even admitting to wanting to do them. So a lot of that could have played a role in here. And I want to bring in Alice Gaynor at the moment here. Alice, can you talk to us about You were in the courtroom. You were in the courtroom for like every day. Lots of emotions erupted inside of the courtroom. Can you talk to us, walk us through? You said at one point Sean Diddy Combs actually kneeled down.
Yes, that's right. I just want to point out the family, they're gathered right now in a lobby over here. I asked someone when they were planning on speaking. They said later. Remember, both parties, they have to put together a letter right now. Defense wants him released today. We don't know what the judge is going to decide. We know government does not want him released today while he awaits his sentencing.
Yeah.
So we're waiting for the family to come outside. It's really unbelievable, the presence here, all the cameras. You asked me about the courtroom.
Yep.
That's right. When this was all over, when the verdict was read after the judge was off the bench, he turned around, dropped to his knees, had his hands clasped like this, praying on the chair. And then once he stood up, his entire family started applauding wildly. There was whistling, there was cheering. He can't go up to them, remember.
Right.
He's still in custody. So he shook a couple of his attorney's hands. Mark Agnifilo, we overheard him saying, "Where do you go now at a time like this?" So I think they're waiting because they have to be here for a few hours to go back inside the courtroom and talk to the judge, argue for this release of Sean Combs. What's interesting about this verdict, we never know what a jury's going to decide.
Yep.
But in talking with legal experts throughout this trial, throughout this process, you check in periodically. And right after closing arguments, I had spoken with one attorney, and he still thought the RICO charge was up in the air. The only thing legal analysts thought that was proved for certain, proved beyond a reasonable doubt, was the prostitution charge. And that's definitely what the jury agreed with. I mean, we sat there, we listened to male escort after male escort testify they were paid to have sex with Cassandra Ventura, or they may have been paid to have sex with Jane while Combs directed these so-called freak-offs. We saw travel logs, we saw hotel receipts, messages confirming the travel, crossing state lines. So Sean Combs obviously happy. I mean, it's not a total loss for the prosecution. That's the Sprinter van that takes the family every day. Obviously, we can't see them. We know they're not going to be speaking right now. But we can see through the window his mother is entering the Sprinter van.
We're told that the family is out right now. That's why you can hear all of those emotions right now.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So the mother, there's his mother. You probably can't see through the tinted window, but his family is getting into that Sprinter van. They'll be back here this afternoon because, again, court is not officially over yet for the day. They have not been able to go up and give him a hug. It was interesting. His defense attorneys said any three of these family members here can sign a bond for him. We have this application so that he could be released. Going back again to this verdict sheet, this is just a copy. I filled it out myself as they were going through it. Again, the not guilty on the racketeering conspiracy, not guilty for sex trafficking of Cassandra Ventura, but guilty of the Mann Act transportation. That was the prostitution charge. Now that carries a sentence of 0 to 10 years. Again, count 4, sex trafficking of Jane, not guilty, but guilty of the Mann Act transportation of Jane. Again, that is 0 to 10 years. He is facing on that charge, but they are relieved because the more serious charges carried up to a life sentence. And his attorney, Mark Agnifilo, was saying as much when he was talking to the judge arguing for bail. He said, he's not going to run afoul of anything you're going to direct him to do. We just want him to be able to travel to Miami, to his Star Island home, LA, and New York.
To see his family, right? Because all his family is here.
And that's where he owns those residences. We've seen photos of the searches of that Star Island home. That's where they had all the guns, and we saw drugs, and they searched his LA home as well. So we don't know what the judge is going to decide. He wants the government to come back in this letter. Give me any examples of a defendant in the past who was found guilty of the Mann Act, the prostitution transportation, who was able to be released or who wasn't able, who remained detained before sentencing. They want examples from the prosecution to see why he should remain detained before sentencing. And again, the defense wants him released. The judge actually said to Mark Agnifilo, "Is that your proposal? You want him to walk out of this courthouse today?" And he said, "Yes, that's Mark Agnifilo's proposal. I know the marshals have things to do, but that's what we want."
Right. And that's why it's going to take a couple of hours before they come back, right? Because that's what they're going to be putting together right now.
That's right. Both sides have to come up with these letters, these proposals. The defense, why they want him released. The government, why they want him detained. The government sounded pretty angry at the thought of him being released. They said, despite the fact that he was under investigation, they allege he was still committing crimes, despite his attorneys probably telling him to lay low and not do these things. So they said they're going to be seeking a lengthy sentence when he is eventually sentenced. And again, he was found guilty of 2 of the 5 counts he was facing, but not the most serious. So life in prison, that is now off the table. We saw him at one point, I know I mentioned, we saw him turn around and get on the ground on his knees and pray. He also, went like this at one point. We saw him, look up. The judge said, I'm sure Mr. Combs doesn't want to go back to MDC. And he shook his head, no, 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 and put his hands up praying like that. So still more to come today.
Yeah. And, you've been in the courtroom every day. We've seen his family in there almost like every day, right? And there were times, I know some from your court notes, where he would pray. He would turn around in the gallery, look at his family, his mother specifically, and pray. There was even a note at some point, right?
That's right. He would turn around from the defense table. Again, he can't get too close to them. They're seated in the gallery. They would join hands, bow heads, and I guess he would lead them in prayer. So that's right. Prayer played a lot into this trial for their family. His sons and his mother were here the most. We know his twin daughters, his other daughter, his 3 daughters. After openings, they seemed to leave and they didn't come back until closing. So they missed a lot of the trial, especially once Cassie Ventura took the stand. A lot of these details were so graphic, so sexually explicit. So we didn't see the daughters return until the very end of the trial here. And again, he has 7 children, 6 of them are here. They pointed out his youngest isn't here because that youngest child is an infant, but he's had support from his family here throughout this trial.
And Alice, Mary had asked us about the folks outside and the mood out here, but there were also Diddy supporters who would come here early every day just to kind of get inside of that courtroom also, right? And a lot of them saying free Diddy, a lot of them supporting him, thinking he should have never been on trial in the first place.
That's right. There were probably a group of people who had these black t-shirts in white writing. It said free Puff. There's a lot of streamers here, people on YouTube, social media, giving their take on the trial, reading some of the court transcripts. I've never seen anything like that at any of these trials before. It's amazing just the crowds this trial has drawn daily. Hard to see because we're kind of stationary where we are, but even to the side of the courthouse, that's where all these streamers set up. And it's interesting to hear them because they're not legacy media, so they're kind of just your average, regular person who's just giving their opinions. And so there's been so much of that. And again, I've not seen that at any trial before this. But right now, mostly behind us, those are, it appears to be photographers and journalists, and the streamers mixed in there as well. But people here around the courthouse are stopping to stare, wondering, what's going on here. So definitely big crowds outside the federal courthouse.
Yeah, they're taking pictures. At one point when you were upstairs, they were chanting free Diddy. A lot of them were like applauding. They're just happy to see that he wasn't convicted of that more serious charge.
And it's interesting because we know yesterday the jury was deadlocked on count 1. So the fact that they came in so quickly and said, okay, now we're unanimous, we figured it out. We know that they went back to the jury room. The judge didn't bring them into the courtroom when they arrived this morning. Yesterday, his instruction was just go straight to the jury room, begin your deliberations. So we know at some point in the 9 a.m. hour, they began deliberating. And then fairly quickly, they sent that note saying, we have a verdict. So
a combined 13 to 14 hours of deliberation, and they were able to come to this. And how unusual or usual is that? Because you cover a lot of court cases. A case like this, do you think that was a little time, a lot of time?
It's interesting. You can never predict. I always say that, as we know. But I really did think there would be a verdict yesterday. We did have a partial verdict. This has been a long trial. They've been listening. They've been paying attention. There was some concern yesterday because right off the bat, it was either the first day of deliberations. They sent a note right away saying they had a concern about juror 25.
Right. I just want to interrupt you for one moment, if that's okay, Alice, because we're told that Cassie Ventura's attorney is about to speak. And we want to take that?
And if so, his name is Douglas Wigdor, and he's been in the courtroom a few times.
Yeah. I'm told that we don't have him yet, the attorney, or we do have him. We'll be coming to him shortly. Oh, he walked away. So Cassie Ventura's attorney, who has spoken to media during this trial, just kind of came out and just walked away. We thought that he was going to speak.
You know what it is? I think a lot of people are waiting until court's officially over today to find out is being released, is he not being released. So I think a lot of people are reserving comment until that happens.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But we know he usually releases a statement. He's very media friendly, so I'm sure we'll hear from him at some point. He also probably wants to speak with his client as well and see how she's feeling.
Because it can go either way, whether he stays being held until sentencing day or if he gets released. And I guess that is why people just want to wait before they make any comments.
That's right, absolutely.
Alice, Cindy Shu here. I just have a quick question for you. As we look at the rest of the day, how do you see it unfolding?
Alice, can you hear what?
I don't have an earpiece.
Okay. So we got Alice on the air right away, Mary. So I will, if that's okay. They want to know, what's next. What was your question, Mary? How do you see this unfolding?
With this afternoon?
Yeah.
I mean, the judge seemed really receptive to what defense attorneys were saying, but he wanted more information from the government. He wants specific case law from previous cases where a defendant has been found guilty of Mann Act, whether or not people have been detained while awaiting their sentencing. So it's going to come down to what is in those letters, who makes the better case, who the judge agrees with. It's unclear which way he's leaning towards, but he is listening to both sides. So he's at least going to consider what the defense wants, which is to have Sean Combs walk out of this courthouse today and not go back to the NBC.
Do you want to put
Jennifer Bisseram, I wanted to see if you can get from Alice Gaynor. We'd love to know the actual reaction in that moment when those verdicts were read aloud.
Lost our signal.
They want to talk about those moments when the verdict was read out loud. There was cheer. There was a lot of emotion that erupted inside of the courtroom. And you mentioned Sean Diddy Combs dropping to the floor at one point.
That's right.
Yeah.
So not outbursts, but all of the applauding and the cheers, that came after because the judge, before the jury came in, reminded everyone, maintain order in this courtroom. That's very important to maintain decorum. They don't want any outbursts. They just want the jury to be able to read the verdict. And then once the jury was out of the room, once the judge was off the bench, that is when Sean Combs turned, dropped to his knees, prayed, and then his family erupted in thunderous applause. They were cheering, they were whistling, they were clapping, just staring at each other because, again, he can't go up to them. He's still in custody.
The defense had said this is what he does, though. He's about family. He takes care of his family. And those were some of the things that he told the jury, right, during closing arguments?
That's right. The defense was arguing, he's a man who's about family here. And, what's so interesting is people talk about count one, the racketeering conspiracy charge, and they say it was confusing. And in the prosecution's closing argument, they seem to really make a case that they had proved this RICO charge just on the drugs alone, because there were 8 acts that were part of the racketeering activity, bribery, arson. But they focused in on a lot of examples of the drug charge. So after you hear them say that, you think, well, I guess the jury, maybe that's what they're going to do, find him guilty. But again, you never know. And the judge instructed them during jury instructions, whatever the attorneys have said, that's not evidence. You're the finders of the facts. You have to look at all of the evidence presented in this case. And that evidence, of course, was what witnesses said on the stand, not the questions the attorneys asked them. Whatever the witnesses said, we saw photos of the searches. The jury saw, we did not see, the sexually explicit so-called freak-off videos. Those were the drug-fueled sexual encounters with male escorts that either Cassandra Ventura or Jane, a former girlfriend of Combs who testified under a pseudonym, those were the videos they were seen participating in where they say Combs was directing them what to do with these male escorts.
A very interesting element in this trial was that video of Cassie Ventura, Sean Diddy Combs' ex, being assaulted in that LA hotel. And of course, the judge said, don't rush to judgment, listen to the evidence. But also his defense said he is not on trial for domestic violence. Right. Unfortunately, regrettably, I believe he used that word, that this was, that was a domestic violence incident. And at times after being, using drugs, that is how he got. But that is not what he is on trial for, right? That he is on trial for all of these other, RICO and sex trafficking and prostitution. Can you talk about what it was like when jurors were looking at that video in the courtroom?
Sure. The jurors mostly had poker faces. None of them really reacted. And again, this is a video that was widely seen before the trial, so I suspect many of them had already seen that video when it was released. And the point of them playing that, again, as you mentioned, the defense said this was not about domestic violence. He was not charged with that here. you know, it was alleged that he bribed a security guard after, paid all of this money, like $100,000, to get a copy of the video so that it would never see the light of day.
Right.
His attorneys argue that was just to protect his image, and because Cassie Ventura didn't want it out there. She had a movie premiere. She didn't want it, it to go to police. They argued it was not so that police would see it. That wasn't the concern there. And of course, that's not what prosecutors said. And they brought in this security guard who says he accepted this money on behalf of himself, his boss, and another security guard. And they provided a copy of this video. And the security guard, his name was Eddie. And so Combs was like, "Eddie, my angel, thank you so much," was so appreciative that he had given him a copy of this video. But it got out anyway.
Yeah.
It was released, and then we saw it again at trial. And it also went to the prosecution's point of that coercion, the fraud, the force, which again, he was found not guilty of. But that was why that video came in, because again, he was not charged with domestic violence.
You know, Alice, one interesting thing I found with this was I've covered court cases in and out of New York. The jury wasn't sequestered here, and that was a 7-week trial. Do you think that had anything to do with any of the outcomes of this trial? I mean, they were instructed to not talk to this case about anyone. They were instructed to not watch any media or look at any media. But yeah, I mean, do you think that had anything to do with it?
I mean, it's interesting. I think, we were talking about this in the press room. I don't think a jury has been sequestered in decades here at this particular courthouse.
Yeah.
And it's a high-profile trial. Again, people likely saw that LA hotel incident video before this trial even started. I mean, jurors were asked this during jury selection, but they were told, block notifications on your phone. Don't look at any stories of the case, which I'm sure was no easy task because this is everywhere. It's all over your phone, on social media, on your newscast. So whether or not they were able to follow that to a T, I don't know. We're waiting to see if jurors will want to talk. They are anonymous. We don't know their names. We know their ages. We know a little bit about them, but that's for their protection because this is such a high-profile case. But we're waiting to see. Maybe they'll come out and talk to us. We have so many questions, especially want to know how they were able to come to that unanimous decision.
Within an hour.
So early
after
this
being
morning.
Deadlocked. Yes,
That's right.
For most part of yesterday.
That's right. And, they deliberated, like you said, for a total of 13, 14 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking like it took them a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So curious to hear more from them, and hopefully they'll speak with us.
As our viewers are as well. Alice Gaynor, thank you so much for joining us right now, giving us that perspective inside of the courtroom. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio for now.
Jennifer Bistram, thank you. Alice Gaynor with your insight, thank you so much. And we did hear from the attorney for Cassie Ventura outside of court. Let's listen in to see what he had to say.
We're pleased that he's been held responsible for something, which is something that hasn't happened in his lifetime. And, we're hopeful that ultimately he receives a substantial sentence for what he's done. And, we're pleased that Cassie's brought to light everything that has happened in this trial. I just spoke with her and with the U.S. Attorney's Office team, and she's in a good place. She's pleased that, again, that the jury has found him liable, or guilty of 2 federal crimes.
And we were just listening to Douglas Wigdor, Cassie Ventura's attorney, who said he spoke with her and that she was doing okay. Now we want to go to Michelle Thomas. She is a trial attorney. Michelle, what was your reaction when you heard the mixed verdicts?
Good morning. I mean, I think that the prosecution, they failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Diddy was involved in this sex trafficking criminal enterprise. I think that with the more than 800, I believe, text messages with Jane and Cassie telling Diddy that they loved him, I mean, I think all of that casts what we call reasonable doubt for the jury as to whether these women were complicit and consensual or not. So quite frankly, because of the muddied waters there, it wasn't surprising that he was acquitted on the 2 most egregious charges.
When you heard there was a split verdict yesterday, what were your thoughts? I mean, what did you expect to hear today?
I expected to hear that there was going to be a guilty on one of the sex trafficking charges, which as it related to Cassie, because the jury was asking questions on the racketeering charge about the underlying predicate crimes that could have been committed. So I thought they must believe that there was some crime committed here and possibly the sex trafficking crime. But as we saw very quickly this morning, the jury came back and said, no, the prosecution did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed those 2 harshest charges.
So, Michelle, you were surprised when you heard the verdicts.
I was surprised because I expected, particularly with Cassie, because as we know, the video doesn't lie. We watched it, the jury watched the video where at the Intercontinental Hotel where Diddy dragged and kicked and physically abused and assaulted Cassie, where she was trying to escape one of the freak-offs. That lends itself to this sex trafficking charge where these women were forced to participate by coercion or force. That's the definition of sex trafficking. So that was a surprise, not in relation to Jane, but certainly in relation to Cassie.
Now, when it comes to the verdicts and those guilty verdicts on transportation to move sex workers, we hear about the sentence, 0 to 10 years. I mean, he could face up to 20 years in prison on these. Do you expect we will see him even serve jail time?
You know, certainly the defense is arguing for leniency. They're going to argue that he walk away today, certainly be released on bond to await sentencing. And then at the sentencing itself, the court has a decision whether to run the sentences concurrently or consecutively. But in this case, he doesn't have to serve any time at all. So I think it remains to be seen that they're going to weigh whether he's a threat to society, a threat to others, or a harm to others, whether he needs to be committed to a penitentiary for a period of time. But the court has wide discretion, as you mentioned, to order no time up to 10 years per crime.
And Michelle, let's talk about how double jeopardy plays with this case.
Well, there is no double jeopardy.
Meaning, right.
Here that he charged.
Okay.
He can't be charged again for any of the crimes because he was acquitted on the racketeering charge, and he was acquitted on the 2 sex trafficking charges.
All right. Thank you so much, Michelle Thomas, trial attorney. Now let's go back to Jennifer Bisram, who is outside the courthouse with Alice Gaynor. Jennifer?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Something that should have been told to me before I even came outside, but whatever.
Hi there, guys. Sorry, we lost you for a second. Hi there, Mary. If you can see behind us right now, there is a lot of commotion happening outside of the courthouse. It's still unclear what's being said.
There's 2 men that have been arguing back and forth. There's a huge crowd surrounding them. We don't know what the dispute is. It doesn't appear to be violent, but I mean, there's just huge crowds outside of here.
I think they're chanting, "Let Puffy go." Mary, not sure if you guys can hear us.
Yes, we can hear you, and we have been watching what is happening outside the courthouse. We did hear from the attorney of Cassie Ventura a short time ago saying that he spoke with Cassie and that she was in a good place, as he had said. We are still awaiting the attorney for Sean Combs to come out of the courthouse, and that's why we're continuing to see that large crowd also trying to find out whether Sean Diddy Combs will be released today and await that sentencing. Again, we have been talking about those 2 counts, 0 to 10 years, maximum 10 years on each of them. He could serve them concurrently. He could serve them consecutively. That will be up to the judge. But a huge day in court today as we saw that split verdict for Sean Diddy Combs.
Yeah, and then we could also see him released, today. So it should be interesting. The attorneys had asked for a few hours to come up with some of the paperwork. So it's going to be a bit of a wait, I think, before we find that out. Let's go back. Do we still have Alice and Jennifer? I had a question for Alice Gaynor.
Earpiece now so I can hear you.
Jennifer, I think you have IFB. Jennifer, can you ask Alice? I mean,
we both have it now. Yeah.
All right, Alice, I'm glad you have it now. You have been covering this case from day one, 7 long weeks. What has it been like for you? I mean, this has been an emotional roller coaster, I think, for everybody keeping a close eye on the case.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much going on, and there's such huge interest in this case. It's like nothing I've ever seen before, actually. I get asked so many questions. People on social media are so interested. They are following me now to try and see our daily updates we've been posting on Instagram. So that's new for us because certainly we've covered high-profile trials before, but I mean, you could probably see behind me. I've never seen crowds of this magnitude throughout the trial, not just at openings or closing and verdict day. I mean, there's been a steady stream of people here curious about it. Like I said before, streaming about it, giving their own personal takes on what's been going on. They had to set up multiple overflow rooms at one point just to make sure they could meet the demand, because not everyone can get into the main courtroom. So they have these overflow rooms set up with a feed of what's going on in the main courtroom that people can then watch themselves. And so that's just been interesting for me, just to see how many people have really cared about this case. And so, as you mentioned, it's been nearly 2 months here at this courthouse. Journalists from all over the world covering this. People gathered here from, all over the area. You can't even see behind us just how many people are here for this case.
Alice, I wanted to ask you, you described the cheers after all of the verdicts were read, but as those first were being read, did you get a sense, or did you have a clear view of Sean Combs or his family, and what was their facial reactions when they heard not guilty?
So Sean Combs pumped his fists at one point when they said that first, not guilty, when the jury foreperson, that's juror number 5, was the one who was reading the verdict. He pumped his fists. I had to write down the verdict really quick, so I couldn't keep a close eye on the faces of his family and of Combs himself, but I just know after the verdict was read and once everyone, the judge and the jury, left the courtroom, man, the applause was thunderous from his family, because you had his 3 daughters, you had his sons, his mother, other family and friends and supporters who were in the courtroom for him today. They were just cheering. He was clapping. And it's such an interesting visual because, again, he's by the defense table. It's not like he can run up and hug them. He's not a free man. He was convicted of 2 of the 5 counts. And what we're doing, as you mentioned right now, is we're awaiting the judge and the attorneys to gather back in the courthouse this afternoon. Both sides are preparing letters right now. The defense is going to be arguing for why they think he should walk out of this courthouse today. The government, prosecutors, they say, no, we want him detained before he is officially sentenced. So that's going to happen later this afternoon. So therefore, all these crowds are going to be here all day, wondering, waiting to see, will Sean Combs walk out of this courthouse, or will he be transported right back to the MDC, which is where he has been detained since his arrest. Oh, and I do want to point out what's interesting is they had argued for bail numerous times before the trial started, and it was denied every single time. So again, he's been detained
and they've
since he was
surrendered his
arrested.
passport, and they talked about that there was no means for him to go anywhere. Even an ankle monitor, they were even saying at one point, right before that.
That's right. And the defense is going to be laying out some very strict guidelines, hoping that the judge will agree with them. They only want him to be permitted to travel between his homes in Miami, LA, New York, nowhere else, like you mentioned, Jennifer, surrendering his passport, that sort of thing. So we'll see what these letters, these arguments say, and what the judge ultimately decides sometime this afternoon. The government said they needed a few hours to prepare their letter.
So there is a possibility that Sean Diddy Combs, if the judge allows it, could walk out of here?
I guess we will have to
50,
see.
50. We still don't know for sure.
We don't know for sure, but we'll see. I mean, and it wouldn't be an immediate thing because, as the defense pointed out, there's procedures he has to go through with the marshals should he be granted, release on bond. But we'll see.
Alice Gaynor, Jennifer Bisram, thank you. And keep it here for continuing coverage on this case and today's verdict. Again, Sean Diddy Combs has been found guilty on counts 3 and 5, the lesser charges.
And we're going to have the very latest today at noon.
This has been breaking news.